evening, I'm Ces Oreña-Drilon.
I'm Pauline Verzosa.
And I'm Shawn Yao.
The big stories tonight. While hinting at a no-election scenario, Vice President Sara reiterates her 2028 run for president. But her hold at the top of the survey is not as solid compared to months ago. Two are closing in.
Now, there is still the impeachment hanging over the VP's head. One lawmaker predicts a sweeping vote in House plenary to impeach Duterte a second time.
And consumer prices rose at their fastest pace in 3 years, with April inflation at a whopping 7.2%. On top of that, the peso's purchasing power also further declined.
Ako po'y nagpapasalamat sa tiwala, pero wala po akong balak na tumakbo as president sa 2028.
I'm already a presumptive candidate. We can only pray that there will be a presidential elections on 2028.
Like father, like daughter. Ang mga ganitong sagot mula kay Vice Presidente, intriga lamang. Mga kwentong walang basihan.
Vice President Sara Duterte was unbeatable in last year's surveys. Well, not anymore, according to the latest Pulse Asia poll. The mock presidential preference survey shows Naga City Mayor Leni Robredo closing in and Senator Raffy Tulfo actually in a statistical tie with the VP. The big story tonight from mobile journalist Julie Baisa.
In the Pulse Asia survey first released by Senator Mig Zubiri and later confirmed by the pollster, Vice President Sara Duterte was pitted against Senator Raffy Tulfo and Naga City Mayor Leni Robredo. This is a hypothetical poll for the 2028 presidential elections. The results? The Vice President is statistically tied with Tulfo at 46%. And against her predecessor, Duterte has 51% of the voting population, while Robredo has 43%. That's only a single-digit difference, compared to earlier surveys by Octa Research, where the gap is noticeably wider. The Octa findings also involve a multiple matchup. The Vice President against several personalities perceived to be being groomed as a presidential candidate 2 years from now. The VP still led with 43%. Mayor Leni came in second with 27%, and Senator Raffy a third with 19%. Other contenders got single digits, Senator Bam Aquino with 5%, Senator Rizzo Ontiveros with 2%, and Interior Secretary John Vic Remulla with 1%. But as early as now, Senator Tulfo is saying no, thank you.
Una sa lahat, buong pakumbaba, ako po'y nagpapasalamat sa tiwala, pero I said it before and I'm going to say it again, wala po akong balak na tumakbo as president sa 2028. Final answer.
Sir, what if mas makakapaglingkod kayo as president?
Pwede na ako maglingkod as senator, di ba? Pareho lang naman yun, lingkod bayan tayo. So yun yun.
Mas malawang
Mas maraming sakit sa ulo.
As for the other Presidente Duterte opponents, Aquino and Remulla have yet to comment on the recent survey results. Mayor Leni, on the other hand, has also reiterated her intention to run again in Naga City. Traditional opposition stalwart said they are trying to convince the former VP to reconsider and take another shot at the presidency. As for Senator Ontiveros, she is keeping her options open. She is likewise undaunted by her numbers in the surveys.
Naging dehado na ako noon, kaya hindi ito bago sa akin. At medyo malayo pa yung eleksyon sa 2028. Ang pinakamalapit sa ating mga Pilipino, sa mga sikmura natin ay itong taas presyo ng langis at mga bilihin.
It is not clear if VP Sara has heard of the surveys or even cares about them. But she is not changing her mind about running in 2028. She is the first and by far the only one who has admitted having plans to be president.
I'm already a presumptive candidate because I declared my intention to run for the next presidential elections. We can only pray that there will be a presidential elections on 2028 and it will be honest, orderly, and peaceful.
To the statement, Palace Press Officer Claire Castro sends insinuation, a hint that there could be a failure of elections in 2028.
Like father, like daughter. Alam naman natin na umamin ang dating Pangulong Duterte na siya ay eksperto sa paggawa ng intriga at pagplanta ng ebidensya. So ang mga ganitong sagot mula kay Vice Presidente ay alam nating intriga lamang, mga kwentong walang basihan.
On One News's Storycon, Pulse Asia Research President Ronald Holmes clarified that the Presidential Preferences Survey was not commissioned. Zubiri wanted to know the pulse of the people and see what kind of leaders they want. For Holmes, while surveys could condition the minds of voters, in the end, their source of information is key in decision-making.
May mga literatura na nagsasabing meron tinatawag na bandwagon effect. Pero natatabla nga ito nung sinasabing underdog effect. Kung saan yung mga supporter ng isang kandidato, sa tingin nila medyo behind yung kanilang kandidato, they will mobilize more. So, kumbaga nagtatabla yung bandwagon at saka yung underdog.
Kapatid Mobile Journal Julie Baiza, We're One News.
Now let's have someone weigh in on this, and our first guest tonight is campaign strategist Alan Herman, who's also president and CEO of Agents International Incorporated. Welcome to the Big Story, Alan. I hope your lights are working okay this time.
That's awful. Hi, Ces, Shawn, and Pawi. I think we're gonna get it right this time. I think we've got the sound dialed in. I've commissioned some of my fans to hold the flashlights to my face. They're getting tired, but they promised that they would maintain this lighting for the rest of the show. So I'm holding on to the commitment of these loyal fans of mine.
On to the matter at hand. VP Sara being a front runner is now being demolished. Is that a correct assumption?
Well, demolished perhaps is it's a strong word. No? Perhaps I would rephrase that and say that her veneer of invincibility, of her being an untouchable, unreachable, insurmountable peak in terms of leading the presidential race, is now being questioned, is now seriously being rethought, because these surveys still a bit far from D-Day, which is 2028, and tingin ko naman magkakaroon ng election. I'm fairly confident that there will be an election in 2028. The runway is still pretty long, but even then, even now, the surveys seem to indicate that she is hitting what we call a ceiling limit, that perhaps she's not as indestructible or unsurmountable as her political opponents thought she would be, or at least was being communicated early on. So maybe not necessarily demolished entirely, but it's showing its cracks. Yun. Siguro that's a more politically correct way of phrasing it.
All right. Now, her main struggle is in Balance Luzon, where Tulfo is dominating.
In fact, I think si Balance Luzon talaga was always traditionally opposition yan. Traditionally, Balance Luzon is usually the voting base that will not necessarily gravitate towards established political magnets and or power bases. So ano yan, that's not surprising to me. Of course, her Mindanao and her Visayas base remains strong. She's still leading. Let's not if you were a critic of the vice president, or if you were not a fan, or if you were supportive of other candidates, let's not do backflips just yet. She's still leading. However, yun na nga, if you look at if you dissect the survey results, it seems to be a trend that she's not getting new supporters. Her base is holding strong, but the trick in an election, marathon yan hindi yan sprint. 3 years pa yung runway. Yung ability to convert new voters and not have them stray to other options seems to be slipping and weakening.
Let's just clarify what you mentioned about Balance Luzon being traditionally opposition, but isn't she supposed to be opposition?
Yun na, in fact, I said traditionally against the established power bases, or political power bases, ang Balance Luzon. And the Duterte, I mean, yan yung mga established power blocks, di ba? Marcos, right now it's a collision between two gigantic political forces, the Marcoses versus the Dutertes.
And Senator Tulfo, or the Tulfos, are still not considered like a power block.
Politically, maybe not yet, but in terms of mass following, boy, the Tulfos are a brand that is unlike any other. In fact, if you'll allow me, no, Ces, the the thing kasi with VP Inday is ano siya may dilution siya because ang totoo namang patriarch dyan, the tower, the obelisk there is really former President Rodrigo Duterte. She's just inheriting that from her father. Pero yung Tulfos, sila yung source. And rather than dilution, may force multiplier sila because and I love them all dearly, but the truth is it's sometimes difficult to tell them apart. So this Tulfo becomes almost a coagulation of one brand na apat sila at the same time doing or I don't know how many of them actually haven't done an actual count of how many Tulfos there are in public service, but you can't tell one from the other almost to a point, and nagiging multiplier siya. So iba rin yung Tulfo brand.
So a few months ago, Alan, we were talking about this huge chunk of undecideds. They were above 30%. As early as now, can you already see, based on the survey results, kung saan sila napupunta? Are they swinging? Are they moving towards a certain candidate?
Well, what we can see, Shawn, and that's a great question. See, you gotta do these lead-ins, di ba? Siguro what we're seeing is si Inday pa lang ang nagde-declare. So the fact that other people are catching up and rising, that means these voters, the numbers, in a way, you can interpret them as these are people choosing away from Duterte. Hindi nila pinipili si VP Inday. So whether it's Tulfo, whether it's Lenny, kasi siya nag-declare na eh. So alam na nila that she's in the mix. So the fact that they're not choosing her, that means they are against her talaga, a hard line against her candidacy. So that is a very good insight and a telling distillation that you can get from the survey numbers.
And having said that, do you think that Sara Duterte being the first to announce and announcing over 2 years ahead of the 2028 elections, could we now say baka she has fallen into that, that
Too
space,
early.
The curse,
early,
the so-called curse.
the curse, yes.
My God, curse talaga yung at the end of the day, curse pa rin, di ba? Pero well, history is not on her side. There is that very glaring statistic of first to declare usually does not finish the race well. That's for a whole spectrum of reasons. If you're first to declare, your opponents can have more time to tear you down, have more time to find your weak spots, have more time to fish votes from your base and expose your vulnerabilities. So that's one. But alam mo, there is some truth din naman to the fact that when you're talking about the Duterte and how fierce their followers are, these usual rules should also be not taken as an absolute. Kasi iba din yung magnetic appeal ng Duterte, and the supporters, if you're a Duterte supporter, my goodness, you'll set yourself on fire for them.
Hindi kasi, Alan, naisip ko rin, she was stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? She already knew she was gonna get impeached again. So it was probably her weighing, like, should I, lay my cards out right now? I mean, it's not a normal circumstance for a normal candidate.
Perhaps we should also add in your response, Alan, how you think impeachment will affect her candidacy.
Okay. Well, actually, I don't know if I was the one who guested that time about that, trying to get narrative control. Shawn, you absolutely hit it on the head. No? That announcement was meant to take the wind out of the sails of the impending impeachment against her. Kaya siya napilitan. She wanted to reframe herself as the vice president being impeached to the leading presidential candidate. So yeah, na-forced to good siya doon. To Ces's point, how is this impeachment affecting her? Clearly, the surveys show that it is. I'm not sure about the period, but if I were a betting man, I would say that her reputation will take a hit. Her support will take a hit. If not convert people to vote away from her, it will definitely affect her ability to convert new voters. Kasi nga, you were a soft undecided na, and then ang dami pang issues na binabato sa'yo. And let's face it, the coverage of the impeachment is far-reaching and wide. You can't avoid it. It's all over your social media feeds. The amounts being mentioned are staggering. And her very odd decision not to defend herself, for me, that is the most telling story of the impeachment. She asked for it. She said there was going to be a bloodbath. Nagamon siya ng away. And then when it was given to her, ito na, this is your chance to explain. The empty chair, the visual of that empty chair of somebody who should be conceptually rushing and clawing to defend themselves is simply not there. Di nagpakita. So I think that strikes a chord in the psyche of a lot of Filipino voters.
So do you think, Alan, that this whole underdog narrative is not working in favor of the vice president? I mean, her camp has repeatedly claimed that the impeachment proceedings are a political attack. She's being politically persecuted. Is that not an effective strategy so far?
Problema kasi, Pawi, you have to choose one if you're a Duterte. Kasi the brand of the Duterte was never an underdog. They built their entire political capital as the unapologetic, scorch the earth, I take no prisoners, get it doneness, rogue, rebel, maverick leaders. Tough talking and will take you by the collar and drag you type of leadership. And then now, to pivot so dramatically and say, oh, we're being politically persecuted. Oh, we're being, oh, kawawa kami. There's whiplash there. And I'm talking purely of optics and messaging. Mahirap yun eh. It's hard to portray yourself as an inaapi when in fact you don't show up.
All right, Alan, let's talk about the head-to-head matchups. If you put the vice president against former VP Leni Robredo, the gap there is narrowing. 51% for Duterte, 43% for Robredo. Is this enough to convince Mayor Leni to actually, make a run again for the presidency in 2028?
God, I hope so. Man, I hope it is. Sorry, I'm letting my political slip show now. But that's 8 statistics. How did you know, Ces? My God. I told you to unplug that camera. I told you to take that off.
Alan. Sinabi na ni Mayor Leni, ang kulit natin, tama na sa yung savior mentality na there's one person. And I don't think a survey will convince her, hindi ba? What do you think?
Well, alam mo, there's nuance to that. As somebody far more clever and far more handsome than me has repeatedly said. When VP Leni said that conclusively that she wasn't running, you really have to take the context of that statement. She was being interviewed in a local radio station in Naga. What else was she going to say? Alam nga naman sabihin niya, hindi, tatakbo ako, di ba? To the local radio station using their dialect. It would seem like such a betrayal naman. She's just newly voted in as mayor. But then after that, there was...
After a while, sorry to interrupt, but after a while, it will be tiresome. Parang stop playing coy, and then you keep changing your mind. It's gonna hurt her also.
Your lips, from your lips to God's ears. Ako mismo, syempre, I'm like, ano ba talaga, di ba? Naiinip ka if you're a supporter. But man, these numbers, 43, di ba? 8 percentage points. You say, sabihin na lang nating 3% margin of error. That's potentially single digits. Rolling off the couch, despite repeated, insistent pronouncements that she's not running. This is an 8% gap. So this is like somebody training and fighting and in the battlefield hardened versus somebody literally rolling off the couch drinking a soda. Tapos 8 percentage points lang yung gap. My goodness, that's super striking distance for a guy like me. I mean, for a guy who runs campaigns and who knows maybe a little thing about it.
Alan, I wanted to get
Go
your
ahead.
thoughts on something, but I want to look at it from the flip side this time around, right? We're talking about all of this, and we're talking about Leni Robredo, who has so far not given an inch that she's actually willing to run. What do you think the traditional opposition is actually doing with all these results? Do you feel that they're actually seizing the moment? Because there seems to be also a dearth of other possible candidates. There are some from their camp who have said, I'm willing, but
Yeah,
parang...
but hindi naman pinapansin ni Risa,
Yeah.
Senator Risa.
And the numbers Oh, and the numbers Kasi nga everybody's pining, everybody's hoping for the Ferrari. Sorry. I mentioned the brand name, di ba? Everybody's hoping for the supercar. And if the possibility is just there, nasa garahe, we're all looking at it. And it doesn't capture our hearts, our imaginations if beside it is a sedan, a normal sedan. I don't want to call Henry, sorry, I didn't mean that. But parang it's that anchor of comparison, anchor of longing. But you know what? If finally there is a definitive answer and talagang hindi naman talaga nag-declare, I would think that the signal of that would be if VP Leni actually endorses a candidate. Then we'll see what the conversion of that endorsement is like. It won't be 100%, I guarantee. But go ahead, yes.
Should they not be doing that
Yeah.
right now already? I mean, while waiting for the Ferrari, can't the Ferrari also say, maybe try the Porsche or maybe try to look for the McLaren? I don't know.
You and your cars,
Ba't tayo
Sean.
napunta
My
sa
goodness.
kotse?
Hindi ko alam si Ana nag-start.
You and your cars, Sean. Don't describe your garage to me, man. Sige na, ikaw na. Should the opposition be doing that right now? Absolutely, yes. 110%. The opposition should be making what we call a netting, di ba? A framework netting wherein it acts as a trampoline. Na kahit sino yung ihulog mo dyan, the trampoline will support and bounce back and amplify. Some weights are bigger than others. If you throw a weight like Leni Robredo into that trampoline, it will bounce back higher. And some are not as weighty. But yes, you're correct. The opposition should be making that mesh right now, building volunteers, building a network of support groups, building machinery on the local level, para at least kung sino man yung tumakbo, they have that trampoline to jump.
But Alan, how potent or how significant is the endorsement power of Leni Robredo, assuming that she will endorse a different candidate, her own choice? Will her supporters naturally gravitate to this new candidate?
Yes, they will naturally gravitate, but like I said, no, it's not a 1:1 correspondence. Not all of her base will be swept up. There's still kasi yung support base ni Leni. I don't wanna sound like I'm turning it into an ideological chasm or anything like that. But they will have that tendency to think about ideology, track record, etc. if it's not Leni. But whoever Leni endorses, I would say the endorsement power, siguro ang stickiness niyan, I would put it at, and I'm doing back of the envelope math here, maybe 80 to 82% ang stickiness.
Now, it was Senator Zubiri who commissioned this survey saying that he wanted to see what kind of leaders people want. Was that question answered?
There's a question there somewhere. It says, right.
Oh, okay. Was it
Senator Miggs, I love you. I love
was
you dearly.
it
But
his way of, seeing how they should be voting once the Senate becomes an impeachment court?
I think there are, I could easily get a ruler and say, I got this ruler so I can slice my apple, di ba? Tama naman siya. The ruler can conceptually slice an apple, but why would you do that? Why would you go about it in that way when there are perfectly good knives around? I mean, if you wanted to see which issues, which policies, and which behaviors are shaping the voter narrative, you could have asked that. Di ba? He could have directly commissioned the survey asking that. But I mean, he's a senator and I'm not. And by the way, I love him. He's a dear friend. So. Bigay na natin kay Senator Miggs. Siyempre, ganyan tayo eh.
But why do you think Senator Miggs would actually pay for Pulse Asia to add on rider questions. I understand Dr. Holmes said he didn't actually commission the survey, but he did pay for additional rider questions.
The riders.
Yeah. Can you explain to us what that exactly means and how that could change, perceptions?
Well, the only way I can make odds or ends of this or any sense of it is because, taking it into the context of the impeachment. Kasi you want to know how what the sentiment is in terms of voter preference. And again, how insurmountable this juggernaut. Is it as unsurmountable as they say it is, the Sara Duterte candidacy? Kasi that will also shape how voting happens on the lower house. When it gets elevated to the Senate, and I say when, I think Kong Joel is coming after me. So when yan, sure na naman yun sa lower house. When it gets elevated to the Senate, they also need to vote. It's sui generis. It's neither a legal nor a entirely political and entirely legal exercises. So knowing that perhaps Inday Sara Duterte's candidacy is not as formidable as they portray it to be, perhaps gives a number of politicians some either measure of relief or some dread, depending on which side of the spectrum you're seated.
All right. Another thing that came up in the survey is the source of the information for voters is influences their choices. Can you elaborate on this? What does it mean? Especially now that with the advent of social media, voters are in their own echo chambers, and
Yes.
sometimes they don't get really to see the other options.
Yes, so essentially what it's chilling actually. It's kind of worrisome. Kasi ako, I only get my news from the Big Story, no? Personally, I base all of my life decisions on the Big Story. What outfit I'll wear, what kind of gas I'll put in my car, what coffee I'll order. Big Story nagsasabi sa akin. But the survey seems to indicate that we're all slaves. Voters are slaves to their algorithm. Kasi the more you click on something, the more it shows up in your algo, and according to the survey, that's where they get their information and base their decisions on. So essentially, we are perpetuating and creating an echo chamber of cognitive, it's cognitive bias. We're searching for news materials, facts, opinions that will validate our own little hairs on the back of our heads, our intuition, our feelings, which should absolutely not be the basis for voting for a candidate.
Which is the hottest platform right now, Alan? Where are people getting most of it? I remember there was a time it used to be Facebook.
Yes.
Have they now migrated to TikTok, which has a smaller time limit?
Facebook is still king. Facebook is still king, but TikTok very, very close behind. The advantage of TikTok, or the disadvantage, depending on how you view it, the advantage of TikTok is that I, Alan Herman, have as much a chance of going viral as Taylor Swift does. Kasi it's content-based. So FYP, for your page, pinupush yung content, not necessarily the personality. So you just have to really, wow, I'm giving it away, right? You just have to really look at the latest topics that the algo will push. So it's magic. Let's say right now it's magic, skateboarding, and the beat challenge. So gagawa ka lang ng materials na ganun and then push your agenda. Chances are people scrolling TikTok will see it.
So
That's not necessarily true for Facebook.
Last question na lang. How do we break this cycle? How do we let voters really examine the options before them and not just be dictated upon by what they see in their algorithm?
Well, wow. Tapos yun yung last question mo, di ba? Who is God? Define love, Alan. Di ba? What is happiness? How do we do it? Well, it's a shared responsibility. Number one, no fake news ever. Let's not pander to fake news in any way, shape, or form. But also to social media users, It's been said a million times, think before you click, think before you share, and also have a healthy balance. Huwag ka lang yung puro opposition lang yung kiniklik mo, basahin mo lahat ng sides to the issue. And your algorithm will actually correct itself.
All right. Thank you for sharing your insights with us. At hindi bumigay mga ilaw mo. Thank you so much, campaign strategist Alan Herman.
Joel, hello. Magandang gabi po. And thank you.
All right, we're just going to take a quick break, but coming up, no actual show of hands yet, but one lawmaker sees almost 200 House members voting to impeach Vice President Sara Duterte again next week. That and more stories are still ahead. Keep it here on One News.
The big story is back with Vice President Sara Duterte pushing back against lawmakers who say her impeachment is certain. The VP addressed this during an interview in The Hague, Netherlands, where she is visiting her father, former President Rodrigo Duterte. House Justice Committee member Terry Ridon earlier said there are nearly 200 lawmakers supporting the Vice President's impeachment.
Kung ordinary individuals lang, but it is different siguro kapag congressman na yung nagsasabi or senator na yung nagsasabi. Kasi magtatanong ka, bakit sobrang sigurado ka na tapos na ito? Na hindi ako makakomment sa kanyang mga nalalaman kasi hindi ko alam kung ano yung alam niya.
While in The Hague, VP Sara also gave updates on her father who remains detained at the International Criminal Court. She said Digong is in stable condition, but the Duterte family is no longer expecting his release and is now preparing for trial.
He looks well, he looks healthy, and wala naman siyang mga problema. I suggested na magpa-physiotherapy siya. But he refused na mag-physiotherapy. Well, I accepted it as it is. We don't see any way that the ICC will let go of the case of President Duterte since isa na lang ito sa dalawa na ICC cases, no? So we don't think na they will let this go. This will really go to trial, and the best way to move forward is to prepare for trial.
Again, several House members are certain they could impeach Vice President Sara Duterte a second time.
They are even saying that they have more than the required 1/3 of the House membership to make that happen. That means over 106 votes in plenary on May 11.
300 plus kami, di ba? O kung ilan yung present sa May 11, makikita yun kung ilan ang buboto. But I think overwhelming na, sobra naman 120 yung magsabi na pipirma sila. Siyempre, may bulong-bulong sa halls of Congress. Alam mo na, estimation ng bawat party. So, meron yun.
I think as we speak, we are looking at almost 200 already. House members who are signifying their intent to support impeachment. I think nag-iikot din siyempre may mga caucuses na pag-ikot sa party list, sa iba pa mga coalitions.
But will political parties have a common stand on the impeachment vote? Partido Lakas, the biggest in the lower house with more than 80 members, will go for conscience voting. This is also the stand of the second biggest bloc in the lower chamber, the National Unity Party, or NUP, and the Liberal Party.
Partido Federal, meanwhile, said its members will vote based on the evidence presented, while the Nationalist People's Coalition, or NPC, is yet to discuss their stand on the issue.
It's still a moving, pinag-uusapan pa rin siya hanggang ngayon. As of now, nasa 2/3, 1/3. 2/3 ang boboto, 1/3 ang merong mga not because of the basis, pero yung mga circumstansya ng kanya-kanyang distrito.
My party stand ang PNP, and we're basing it on what we see as evidence for probable cause.
In another development from the lower chamber, Manila 3rd District Representative Joel Chua is the newest member of the National Unity Party or NUP, the second largest political bloc at the House. Congressman Chua joins us tonight. Good evening, Congressman. Welcome to the Big Story.
Hi, good evening, Ces, Shawn, and Pauline, and to all your televiewers.
Congressman, why the move on the eve of the plenary vote on the impeachment?
Well, it has nothing to do with the voting. It was even during the 19th Congress that some or most of the Manila congressmen, it was actually what we want, no, to be with one party. And now that we have the opportunity to join one party, so inano lang namin, we just push through with it, with our plan.
You're saying the Manila congressmen want to be in a single party. That's the main reason?
That is the main reason. Actually, we were supposed to join NUP during the 19th Congress when we first won our first term. But unfortunately, at that time, NUP was not accepting new applicants. Very limited lang yung kanilang members at that time. So ako naman, at that time, I stick it out with Action Democratico for 2 years. But unfortunately, because of local politics, I have to sever my ties with Mayor Isko Moreno. So that's why I joined Lakas. And Kong Erwin and Kong Ernix was supposed to join NUP, but at that time NUP was not accepting new applicants or new members. That's why they joined Lakas. And now that we were invited to join NUP, so parang yung mga dati na namin pinag-uusapan, this is the opportunity naman for us to belong to one single party. Ako, si Kong Benny, Kong Valeriano, who happens to be my best friend, and Kong Ernix and Kong Erwin.
So all 6 of you congressmen in Manila are now part of the NUP?
Well, except one, si Jel Maceda, because the former Senator Maceda, Ernesto Maceda, happens to be one of the, I think, stalwart of NPC. So medyo, although tingin ko, if she will be given the opportunity to join, talagang sa amin rin. Because magkakaibigan nga kami since our, since our councilor days.
Well, Congressman, when it comes to the voting for the impeachment, the National Unity Party already announced that their stand here is that they will vote based on their conscience. I know you're just a new member, but how do you think NUP will be voting here? Will you be voting as one, and will it be in favor or against the impeachment of VP Sara?
Well, of course, there are some members who will vote no. Or who are still undecided at this point in time. But ako naman, how can I say no? I've been with this since 19th Congress. So ngayon, I'm a member of the Justice Committee. I played an active part in this in the conduct of the hearing. So talaga naman nakita ko lahat yung mga evidence. So, and in fact, I was invited to be part of the prosecution team. So, if and when I decide to join that invitation, so paano naman ako, how can I say no?
Last year, Congressman, 215 lawmakers signed the impeachment articles, no? And Kong Terry Rodon said, yan din yung target niya for this particular impeachment process. And he said almost 200 daw ang boboto na para sa specific impeachment na ito. Kayo po, Congressman, what are you hearing on the ground? I know you already alluded to some lawmakers changing their minds after seeing the evidence, na parang na-convince sila that this should really be elevated to the Senate for a trial.
Well, yesterday was our first session days, no? First session day. So medyo marami akong nakausap na parang before parang medyo hesitant sila eh. But after the second hearing, after the AMLAC and the SALN, no? All this new evidence and siguro parang medyo nagbago yung kanilang mga mga isip eh, because it would be very hard on their part to say no when nandiyan dyan na sa harapan mo eh. Sumisigaw lahat yung mga ebidensya eh.
So, balikan ko lang yung sinabi mo that you were invited to join the prosecution team. Kong Joel, what's holding you back if you could share with us, no? Are you inclined to join or thinking about it pa?
Wala naman, pero siyempre unless and until na basahin, baka mamaya may mag-upo sa mga congressman, masyado naman akong assuming, 'di ba? Masyado ka naman pinangungunahan kasi sa plenary pa yan pagbobotohan pa yan, baka mamaya may mag-upo. So ayoko namang masyadong pangunahan yung mga members, mga kasama ko.
Now, on another matter, Congressman, you say you joined the NUP because you wanted to be together with your colleagues in Manila, but there are also talks of a leadership change in the House, and the person being talked about is Representative Puno, who's with the NUP.
Wala naman akong, it was not discussed to me. Basta ako, I was just invited by Valeriano, Congressman Valeriano. Kami naman lagi magkakasama even during the 19th Congress, lagi kami magkakasama. Pupunta kami sa kape. Ako, Congressman Valeriano, Ernix, Erwin, kami naman talaga yung lagi magkakasama. Manila Black nga, kung tawagin nila diba? And syempre, of course, si Kong Benny pa, who happens to be the most senior sa amin. So talagang yung naman namin, yung samahan namin sa Manila talaga.
Pero may ugong ba, sir? May ugong ba o wala?
At this point in time, wala naman ako naririnig na gano'n.
Okay, meron po kasing umiikot, no, na may pending coup daw sa House kasi nababagalan daw yung mga tao, no, pagdating sa pag-tackle ng priority bills of the current Speaker, Boji D. So you're not hearing any of that? I'm not hearing. Kasi sa totoo lang, yung speakership, di ba, normally yan, may basbas yan ng Pangulo ng Malacanang So, if ever na mangyari man yan, I think kadalasan naman yan with the blessing of Malacanang.
All right.
I guess one more question, would you expect to happen on May 11? Magpa-plenary na, nabanggit nyo na, doon na yung botohan ng mga prosecutors, but what else can the public expect come May 11?
Well, of course, the floor will be open for discussion and debate. So baka may mag-interpolate sa sponsor. Anyway, the one who will be defending, no less than the committee chair, si Congresswoman Jinky Luistro. So, naman, alam naman niya talaga yan.
And Congressman, when it comes to the voting, I know a lot of the parties already said they will be voting based on conscience, on the evidence, but there are also allegations of political arm twisting. Yung kampo po ng Vice President, that's what they're saying. Lawmakers are being incentivized, pressured when it comes to the district budget or even threats. Nakakasuhan daw sila sa ombudsman. Maybe you can set the record straight, Congressman.
Ako kasi, ewan ko, kasi ako ever since naman, I played an active part in this committee hearing. But, ladies, pagka naman ikaw nakikinig ka rin naman dito sa committee hearing, and I'm sure most of the members of Congress are watching the proceedings, talaga namang it would be very hard on our part, no, to say no. Especially now that after this pieces of evidence sa lahat ng article, sa lahat ng mga grounds, no, lumabas na. So siguro actually baligtad parang mahirap ipaliwanag kung ikaw ang magnono 'Di ba? Parang pinikit mo yung mata mo after wala namang ipinresenta yung kabila. Wala namang evidence, they did not even rebut any single ground. Wala naman silang ginawang ebidensya. So, what would be the reason to justify your vote?
Okay, we thank you for joining us. House Justice Committee member Congressman Joel Chua and one of the newest members of the NUP. Thank you. Now, in other news, Chinese state-owned media reported the Balik Pag-asa mission crew, quote, illegally set foot on Sandy Cay and littered the area. In an article released Monday, the Chinese press said their Coast Guard carried out maritime law enforcement in the sandbar. That's to clean up garbage left by the so-called illegal Philippine personnel. But the Atin Ito coalition denied the claims outright, saying they stayed on Sandy Cay for only 10 minutes.
Para itong tanim basura, planting garbage. Like planting evidence, tayo daw yung nagkakalat. Kung tutuusin, sino ba yung may track record na, ayun nga, nagsa-cyanide fishing nitong nakaraan, tapos sinisira yung coral reef natin.
Aside from the so-called maritime law enforcement, Beijing also planted its flag on Sandy Cay in a show of national sovereignty. Akbayan rebuked this.
Nandito na naman sila sa kanilang mga fake news, 'di ba? Ito po ay isang desperate attempt na para i-discredit nila kami doon sa naging ginawa naming mission doon sa Sandy Cay na naging successful. Ito ay very poor copycat po ng ginawa nila. Sila nga rin po ang tunay na naninira ng ating mga coral reefs, nagnanakaw ng ating mga taklobo.
We're going to pause for another quick breather, but right after that, President Marcos and his sister, Senator Amy, have not spoken in years. Is there hope for reconciliation still? The answer from Malacanang when the big story returns. Keep it here.
Welcome back to the big story. In Albay, there was another surge of hazardous pyroclastic density current, or USON, from Mayon volcano. News 5's Mon Gualvez has this report.
For residents of Kamalig Albay, it's like waking up in a desert. Heavy ashfall and volcanic debris cover the landscape caused by constant activity from Mayon volcano. Residents walk on thick ashes, blanketing the streets, and there's never-ending cleanup. Take Danilo, who have resorted to using fabrics just to keep the ash off their clothes and food utensils. The debris forces its way inside their home, no matter how tightly they shut doors and windows.
Oo nga po, pag dumadaan po yung mga sasakyan dyan, dito lahat yung abo sa amin. Kasi lalo na yung papunta dito yung hangin. Masakit po sa ilong. At saka po sa mata.
On Tuesday morning, May 5, another surge of thick smoke was spotted by the slope of Mayon. FIVOC says it's another pyroclastic density current or an avalanche of hot gas, ash, and rock rushing down. There's a small chance that this could cause another heavy ashfall, just like what Albay experienced over the weekend.
Nag-post din po siya ng ash plume, pero yung ash plume po ay mabilis lang naman na nag-dissipate o nag-disperse. But umabot po yung ash plume ng 1,900 meters above mean sea level yung height niya. Konti po yung load nitong PDC na to o yung dala niya po na material.
But FIVOC says there's no room for complacency. There's no telling if the ashfall will stop, heavy or otherwise. Mayon is still churning. Back in 2023, The volcano's activities did not recede until after half a year.
We expect a long hold, several months, probably more. Pero sana naman hindi. Ang mangyari dito kapag merong explosive activity, mapabilis yung paghupa niya. Pero kapag ganito kasing behavior ng vulkan na effusive activity, yung quiet release of lava doon sa edifice ng vulkan, medyo kapag ganitong behavior niya tatagal.
And so, the local government is on constant watch. But they will need all the help they can get, especially with limited funds. Nobody's certain how long Mayon's unrest will be this time around.
Kung LGU talaga, hindi kaya yan. Pero limited. Kasi hindi pa rin to. Kasi inaabangan pa natin yung tagbagyo. Siyempre, nangailangan tayo ng tulong. Kaya sana yung quarry, tingnan ng probinsya, alin ba dapat i-quarry? Ibigay na nila doon sa mga magkukwari para hindi na pupunta yung mga lahar at yung ibang debris doon sa kasentruhan ng mga kabayan.
Aside from the ashfall, residents of Albay hope the low-pressure area spotted near them will skip the region. Rains could trigger lahar, and that will be another challenge to be endured and hurdled. For News 5, Mon Gualvez, we are One News.
And now here are the other stories making headlines this Tuesday. The city government of San Jose del Monte, Bulacan has taken over water operations from Prime Water. This comes after months of erratic supply that forced the city to declare a state of calamity and deploy emergency water deliveries to affected communities. The takeover marks an escalation in a long-running dispute over Prime Water's poor service, including low pressure and interruptions. And in other news, Philippine headline inflation rose to a 3-year high of 7.2% in April. This is the fastest since March 2023, when inflation hit 7.6%. Higher prices of food, transport, and housing were the main drivers of last month's inflation, according to the Philippine Statistics Authority. The April print also exceeded the Bangko Central's forecast of 5.6 to 6.4% for the month. Meantime, the PSA also says the purchasing power of the Philippine peso fell to 73 centavos in April, down from 75 centavos in March. This is the local unit's lowest purchasing power since 2018. And today, the peso closed at 61.55 against the greenback, just a tad stronger than its record low of 61.567 on April 29. The local currency continues to hover near the new psychological barrier of 62 pesos amid the oil crisis. Earlier in the day, it opened at 61.69 against the US dollar and weakened to an intraday high of 61.74.
Moving on to other news, Malacanang is reacting to Senator Amy Marcos's recent statements about her relationship with brother, President Bongbong Marcos. We are pulling up that soundbite again. Take a listen.
Non-existent. At this point, of course, mahal ko siya, kapatid ko, pero I haven't seen him. Perhaps over a year now. That there were drug issues and addiction issues, and I exposed that in November. Wala pang 2 buwan. Diretso na siya sa ospital ilang beses. Kaya talaga nalulungkot ako. I have been enjoining them to issue a medical bulletin made by a doctor.
Now, a couple of days after that statement from the presidential sister, the palace has confirmed that the Marcos siblings are indeed estranged. In a media briefing today, Palace Press Officer Undersecretary Claire Castro said Senator Marcos had been skipping family gatherings. Castro confirmed that the president felt slighted by his sister's pronouncements, although he does not harbor any ill feelings toward her. Last year, Senator Marcos accused the chief executive of drug use. Recently, she claimed that Mr. Marcos has had multiple hospital visits.
They haven't spoken for almost 3 years.
Can you please describe the reaction of the president? Like, how does he look when you ask about his relationship with his sister?
Paano ko ba i-describe yung kanyang reaksyon? Bago siya kasi sumagot, ay pinag-isipan niya talaga. Sa aking paningin, sa kanyang body language, ay disappointed siya sa kanyang nadidinig ng mga salita mula sa kanyang kapatid.
Now for our big picture tonight, it's the Philippines as host of the 48th ASEAN Summit. Key activities are unfolding this week in Lapu-Lapu City, Cebu. Preparatory meetings among senior officials and ministers begin tomorrow across venues in Mactan. This will be followed by the special BIMP-EAGA Summit on May 7. The main summit will officially begin on May 8 at the Mactan Expo, where President Bongbong Marcos will meet with ASEAN leaders for the biannual talks. Discussions are expected to focus on regional security, energy and food supply, economic cooperation, and the safety of ASEAN nationals. Press conference by the President and a state dinner hosted by the First Family will cap the day's events.
All right, and on that note, that's it for the big story this Tuesday. Thank you so much for watching.
We are back here tomorrow at 8 p.m. We'll see you then.
Kapatid, we are One News, all sides, all the time. Have a good night.